Welcome to Fan Counters. My name's Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we're all over social media on Twitter and Instagram at Fan Counters Live. You can also follow us on Facebook by searching Fan Counters. And our email address is always active at
hello@fancounters.com.
We're always looking for your show feedback. You can email us some guest suggestions. If you've got somebody you want to hear on the program, we'll do our best to get them on. And then lastly, any streaming service where you're listening to Fan Counters, go ahead and rate us 5 stars, give us some positive comments, and we would certainly appreciate that.
Yes, please.
So, Elizabeth, it is school's been in session for a week, which is 2 weeks for me, 1 week for you, which is awesome.
Yay!
And this weekend's a big football weekend. The Packers are opening up their football season, as well as every team in the NFL. We've got a guest on today that it does mean a lot to. It's her career. Taylor Bisciotti is here, and we'll talk to her in just a little bit. So, Elizabeth, you've come into my house today into the studio sort of ranting about a topic that you seem pretty passionate about. So why don't you tell the listeners so I don't have to hear about it?
I am really tired of people not follow-up calling or calling me back. So we decided that we were going to have our soffits and fascias done in our house, out on the outside of our house.
That sounds expensive.
It was.
Uh-huh.
And we signed the contract in June.
Okay.
I got no response after I signed the contract.
From the people that are going to do the work.
From the people that I'm sending, $6,500 to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wait, and of course we were gone the whole month of July.
Yep.
So I finally got a hold of somebody and said, listen, I need this done before we leave. I signed this early enough, it should be no phone call whatsoever. So I call again, I start emailing, and now I'm kind of being a little terse in the emails. Like, hey, what's the story here?
Have you paid anything at this point?
No.
Oh, okay,
no,
good.
no,
Thank
no.
goodness for that.
And I finally get, okay, we can't get it done before you leave, but we will come the Friday after you get home.
Okay.
So we got home on a Monday night. I'm expecting these people on Friday. Thursday comes, no phone call, no, hey, we're coming tomorrow, no materials have shown up, nothing happens. I think I waited another couple of days and called and said, hey, I was under the impression we were supposed to have done this last Friday. What's the story? Oh, don't worry. We're looking at this coming Friday. So maybe about Thursday, materials show up.
Good sign.
And nobody says anything to me. Nobody says, yes, we're coming, or no, we're not. Another Friday goes by.
So now you have crap in your driveway?
I do have crap in my driveway.
No idea.
And this is now, it shouldn't have been an issue, but the crap sat there for over 10 days, and we needed to go camping. So we needed to get the RV out, and they had put it next to the RV.
Oh, my gosh.
So Mark had to move all of the materials to get the RV out for us to be able to go for a weekend camping. 3 people show up. One of them has a broken arm. He looks at the job and goes, we can't do this. And I said, I'm sorry, what? He goes, yeah, with my broken arm, your peaks are too high. We simply can't do this. And he was the only one that spoke English, so I couldn't even explain to the other 2 what needed to be done. So finally someone shows up and says, oh, we're sorry. Don't you worry. I'll have a new crew here. They'll come Saturday and Sunday, and it will be done before you get home on Sunday. So Friday we pull out. I leave my next door neighbor in charge. And apparently people came on Saturday and did some work, but then didn't call back and leave a message or anything that said, hey, we're not coming on Sunday, or we'll be there on Monday, or whatever. We get home on Sunday night, and they have parked their trailer in my driveway. And now I can't
park
the RV back in my yard.
Yeah.
So I start making phone calls to the person who sold it to me, any phone number I have, and they finally say to me, well, I can't move it till tomorrow. No, I can't park my RV on the streets in my town. And so we have to go get a vehicle that is big enough to push their trailer up my driveway so I can get the RV in. Somebody comes, and it's a delightful man, and he was there had been there on Saturday, and he does the work all by himself. This is like a 2 or 3 man job. He is up the ladder, down the ladder, up the ladder. So it took him a week and a half to finish this. This should have been a 2-day job. Nobody calls me. He didn't show up on Monday. It was a beautiful day. There was no rain. So I called back and I said, hey, what's going on here? And I got someone, an actual human being, who said, I'll find out and get back to you. No follow-up phone call.
Man.
So, you know what? If you're going to do work with me, could you just follow through and communicate with me? They finished the work yesterday. Someone came to pick up the trailer, and then some other person was coming to pick up all the trash that they had left. And so both the person who picked up the trailer and the person who picked up the trash, I expressed my absolute disappointment at this event, thinking, you know what? I have told every person who will listen how absolutely disappointed I am. This is the 4th project we have done with this company. And again, I kind of assumed that someone higher up would have called and said, gosh, we're so sorry that you're unhappy. Can we make it up to you? Can we take a discount off? Can we do something? I have not currently written the check yet, and I'm kind of holding on to it for a while because I am, all you had to do was communicate with me, follow up. That's all I ask. So if you say to me, you're going to call me, call me.
All right. Can we get to the today's show?
Yes, please.
Do you feel better?
I do. Thank you all for letting me vent, but for God's sakes, follow up on phone calls, will you?
Yes.
You're actually very good at it.
Oh, I know.
And
In fact, it bothers me you go to bed so early because I text you and I got to wait till the next morning to
Right.
get a
As
response.
a matter of fact, you texted me just the other night, and I was like, do you know what time it is?
Yeah, 8:45.
I know, and I was like, what the heck are you doing sending me a text at 8:45? I was in bed already.
I know. Well, I knew. See, I've learned now. It's been a year.
Yep.
In fact, this is the 1-year anniversary of our show, by the way.
Yeah, isn't that delightful?
Show 53 today.
Yay.
We've got Taylor Bisciotti. Football season's upon us. The NFL is playing their first games this weekend, and I couldn't really think of a more fitting guest to have on the show than Taylor Bisciotti. Taylor is the youngest on-air talent the NFL Network has ever hired, and her natural ability to report the stories of the game is not only informative, but entertaining. Her unique stories about the players make them relatable and lovable. So today, we're going to learn all about the life of Taylor Bisciotti.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fan Counters with Nick and Elizabeth on the PodFix network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
I continually will get stopped.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
That's why we call it Fan Counters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Taylor Bisciotti, this weekend is what football fans have been waiting for since the end of the Super Bowl. It's the opening weekend of the NFL, so we couldn't think of a more appropriate guest than you for this week's show. So welcome to Fan Counters.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited, and especially excited for football season to kick off.
I bet.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes. Well, we're broadcasting from Milwaukee, so we have the Packers to look forward to. So we're very excited
And
for a
they're gonna
great
be good.
season. I hope, if we can stay healthy.
Aaron Rodgers is back and healthy, so
Yes.
he pretty much is a magician back there. So I think he can make a lot of good things happen.
I hope so. Now, we have a very important hobby in common, which is being able to help others tell their story. So have you always had a good knack for telling stories?
I think I can tell people's stories well. You know, they always say there's never a boring story. There's always just a bad storyteller. And I think it's more of like finding what people's stories are. You know, everybody's got an interesting story and they've all overcome adversity and they have like a really neat path in which they've taken to get there. So I think that once you find that, it's just kind of, telling it in a fun way and making it relatable and humanizing these people.
We all know your work on the sidelines reporting for the NFL Network, but your career pursuits didn't lead you that way from the beginning. Your original major at the University of Georgia was accounting?
Yes, I know. I could never picture myself crunching numbers in a desk with like in the back of a building with no sunlight. That's what I envision it like. So I was in my last year and I'm thinking after the Super Bowl, and it's like February or March and I was about to graduate. I'm thinking I cannot. And pretty much in accounting, they map out your next 5 years for you. And then after that, basically your next 5 years after that, once you join one of the big five. And so I was thinking about it and I'm sitting in class and I'm like, this is just not what I want to be doing. So last minute applied to a bunch of internships in broadcast journalism because I had started school with two majors, which was digital and broadcast journalism and accounting. But since it's in two separate buildings, it's the business school building and then journalism building. They make it pretty hard to kind of major.
Okay.
And so I chose business, and then I ended up interning at WUSA 9 that summer on the news side of things. So I was on the 11 o'clock news because somebody had dropped out for their internship. And so I was there. And so I was like, I'll absolutely take it. So I was doing the 11 o'clock newscast. So my morning meeting would be at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So I found myself sneaking up to the sports department at 8 a.m. every morning and just asking the reporters, I was like, do you guys want a third person there? And luckily we were in DC. And so to get in the carpool lane, you can go in the fast carpool lane if you have 3 people with you. And so they were like, absolutely. We don't really want you, except you will be the third body in the car. So we get to go in the fast lane. And so it was a win-win for me too, because I was able to go on stories and I would come back, basically pull a double shift, and then I would go and do the news side of things, which was great doing both. And I think I just realized that my passion was obviously more in sports. I just wasn't sure I wanted to go the sports route immediately. I felt like, there would just be a lot of people saying, oh, she's going this route, blah, blah, blah. And so I decided to kind of do both in my broadcast journalism. I was doing sports and news. And then once that time was up, I found myself even in college or even my last year of broadcast journalism, I was working for ESPNU and just knew that sports was what I really wanted to be doing.
So talk to us a little bit about your family and where your love of football began, because it's been a big deal in your household your whole life.
It has. So I am the only girl out of 4 boy cousins and 1 brother, and then 4 boy cousins, or 5 of us all together. And so I grew up with an all boys household. I was also the youngest. So in order to fit in, I basically had to get involved with sports at a pretty young age if I wanted to join the conversation. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. My family and my dad is originally from Baltimore. So we spent a lot of time up there during the fall. My uncle bought the Ravens in 2000. So we're partially, and then, eventually bought the whole team. And so it's always been a major part of our life. And then I went to Alabama my freshman year, which is the mecca of football in the South for SEC. And then I went to Georgia for my last 4 years. And so SEC football has always been a huge part of my life as well.
What did Sundays look like for you growing up as far as the tradition of getting together to watch football?
So if we were not in Baltimore for games, we would be in Atlanta. And it was a day that we were never really allowed to have our friends over because any distractions were just not allowed.
That's serious.
People weren't allowed to talk during the games. I mean, it was intense, I'm telling you. But yeah, so we would go to church in the morning and then come back. And of course, now I'm on the West Coast where games start earlier. So it's a little different. But I would have time to get stuff done. And then the 1 o'clock game would kick off. So we would always be home for all of those games. And we never really switched it during the Ravens game, but every other football game we would kind of do red zone or switch back and forth between the different games. And it was just always, it was so much fun. It was a way that our family really bonded. And especially my cousins in Baltimore, we always stayed in touch through football. It was the universal language of our family. My grandmother is actually the reason why my dad and my uncle are even football fans. Their father passed away when they were really young at the age of 13, or my dad was 13. And she really wanted them she was a huge sports fan and she wanted them to love sports. So she would take them to the Baltimore Colts games growing up. And that's how they became huge Johnny Unitas fans and really got into football.
That's fantastic.
So if you want the craziest football fan in our family, it's definitely my grandmother.
I love that. The matriarch is in charge here. So
Oh yeah. We're scared that sometimes she's gonna break the windows to the box because she's slamming on the windows so loud. We're like, oh my gosh, Nana, calm down.
So who's her team?
Well, now it's the Ravens.
Right, but growing up, was it the Falcons? I mean, were you big Falcons fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I loved the Falcons for the sense that I felt like my friends really got into football if the Falcons were good, and so there was something that we could share in common. Because if the Falcons weren't really that good, then my friends, especially my girlfriends, never really got into football that much.
Okay.
And so it was kind of me and always all the guys again talking about football. And so it was always more exciting for me if the Falcons were good because then my girlfriends got into it.
I love that. That's how I am.
I'm a fair weather fan. The Falcons lost to the Patriots.
Oh. So you ultimately graduated from the University of Georgia. Did you ultimately graduate with both degrees, one in marketing and one in broadcast journalism, or one in business?
Yeah, so I was already so far along in accounting that I had enough credits and everything to get a marketing degree. So I ended up finishing with that marketing degree. And then I held out a PE so I could stay on the Hope Scholarship. So I didn't finish that PE class until my last year. So I could at least do 2 more semesters in broadcast journalism and be on the Hope Scholarship. And so it was an extra year. I actually crammed in so many hours into that 1 year. I was taking like over 18 at one point. So it was kind of crazy, but it was totally worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so then how did this job with the NFL Network come up? So tell us, how did the opportunity how did this interview come about?
Yeah, so I was living in Atlanta, and I was freelancing I was a one-man band for Bleacher Report, Sporting News. I was basically taking any freelance gigs I could get. So I was like shooting, editing, reporting, and that was challenging, definitely challenging. But after being at WUSA 9, I just noticed that their sports department, like their amount of time that they were able to do per newscast, it was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I thought, well, I do live in a great area where SEC Network and like SEC football is such a big part of people's lives that there really are other outlets, and even if they're digital outlets, that would let you cover it. And I feel like you would just get more experience covering more sports and kind of more time telling these stories if I just freelance. But that was definitely tough for a while. So I was doing that for about a year and a half. And then I started working a little bit with SEC Network, but again, it was just freelance. And so that was definitely like a challenging time, just because you kind of wonder, like, am I going the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And then I flew out to LA to take a bunch of different interviews with different networks. And surprisingly enough, NFL Network was not one of them.
Really?
And then they had an opening about 2 weeks after I was in LA for like news updates. And so they needed somebody immediately. So on like 2 weeks notice, I flew out or moved out here. Both my parents were actually out of the country. And so I moved out here with like 3 suitcases, signed a lease. It was exciting. It was really fun. I moved in on like the first day of my job. So
that is amazing. Were you like, how nervous were you starting that new chapter of your life? You're away from home. You're not even getting in your apartment till the day you start. That's crazy. You found it without seeing it. What was all that like for you at that time in your life?
It was nerve-wracking, but I was so excited. I was definitely nervous, especially when I went in and we did like camera tests. So they had like the call drop, is that they were just kind of like seeing where I was in terms of like news updates, like whether like I would be able to toss live to Ian Rappaport. And so then they had a fake Ian Rappaport on, and then they had the call drop. And of course, the way that we have our news updates set up is you're in the newsroom. And so like you're sitting in front of everybody. So like there's probably 50 people in the room usually, and everybody's just like staring at like, who's this new girl? And so yes,
no pressure here.
Nerve-wracking for a while. Yeah, and I hadn't really done it where there were so many people in one room, because like usually when you anchor, I mean, you're on set and people are there, but it's like you and the co-host usually.
Yeah.
So that was definitely different, and it was definitely nerve-wracking, but I was really, really excited. And honestly, I had so many other things going on. I had sent my car out here, and my car did not show up, surprisingly. It like showed up a week later. It was bizarre. And so I had my head was in so many different spots that I feel like it was probably better that it was in so many different spots. Like if I did mess up, I wasn't focusing on it way too much and like letting it really get me down.
Sports reporting is typically a male-dominated field, but many of the top reporters and the most favorite reporters overall are women. Did any of the female reporters or journalists reach out to you with any advice that has helped you?
Yeah, Sage Steele, actually, when I was going through a bunch of interview processes, and she reached out to me, and she was so helpful. She had just kind of spot on like advice, which was, don't give up, keep fighting for it. It takes a while, but she was giving me her path, and she's gone like a crazy path to get to where she is. And she said to just, not let a bad day really affect you that much. I mean, everybody has bad days. It's totally normal. You just kind of have to keep working and fighting for it, and eventually you'll get to be where you want to be. She's definitely been a really great person to have in your corner. And then when I got to NFL Network, honestly, all the reporters and anchors have been awesome. I'm lucky to work in such a great place with so many people that are very supportive of one another, especially the women. I've noticed that like the women at our network are awesome to one another, and it's never like really a competition. It's more like rooting for each other. And if somebody gets a great opportunity or a gig, I've never really had anything negative come of it. It's always been like nice text messages of like congratulations, and No, we are all in different locations because, some of us are in New York and then all of our reporters are spread out everywhere.
Right.
We have like our media seminar that's once a year, and I feel like you know them all already just through talking through social media and whatnot. That's a plus of social media right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that makes it a better workplace if everybody's supporting each other, which is what it should be. You're working for the same company. You should want everybody to succeed.
Yes, but you've been in an office where there's a lot of
Yeah, I know.
females. That's not how that
I
goes.
have. I know. I'm just saying, in a perfect world.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's the rarity
We all
there.
have those bosses.
So, Taylor, it was just about a year ago. Cam Newton made a sexist comment to a female reporter about routes, and it made headlines. So I don't want you to call anybody
Yeah.
out, but in your experience, have you had those moments where, like, the guys on the field are just not giving you the credit that you deserve for being a knowledgeable reporter that you are?
I've personally not. I mean, all the people I've interviewed have honestly been very like gracious and supportive, and they want to talk to you just as much as you want to talk to them most of the time, just because they enjoy kind of getting to tell like their side of things and their story. And I've never really had that. I mean, I wish I could say I had. It would provide for a really great story. It's just I feel like players, because they're held to a higher standard now. And so I think that they can't get away with as much as they once were able to get away with, especially like, in the locker room and whatnot. And so I think that that's it's made it a better environment for like all female reporters. And of course, you're always, and no matter what sport you're covering, you're going to always have a player that's had a bad game or had a bad day, and they're not really dying to talk about it right now. And so they're not going to be in the best mood when you interview them. And of course, that's always tricky because you totally understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, you do have to get that interview. And so you kind of try and go about it a better way, but that's just normal. No, but I don't think I would be in a good mood either if I had a terrible day on TV and then somebody wanted to talk to me about it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that huge fumble you just did. Yeah, I get it. So what memorable moments have you had so far reporting from the NFL game day sidelines?
One of my most memorable moments this year was definitely going to Texas A&M Pro Day. So we didn't think that there was going to be that much to talk about there. Christian Kirk, the receiver who's now with the Cardinals, was coming out of A&M, and we were really there to watch him. So it was only myself and then a producer who I'd never worked with before, just because I was flying in from LA to Texas A&M right after work. And Johnny Manziel ended up saying the day before that he was going to be there. And so I knew that was going to be kind of obviously I'd never interviewed him before, and he has quite an interesting reputation. So I was a little apprehensive to go up and interview him afterwards, but it ended up being like one of my favorite interviews all year. He was just, you could kind of see like his development and his progress and just how much he had changed over the past 2 years. I loved doing that and kind of getting to see his story from like straight from him. And he couldn't have been more of a class act and nicer. And he realized like the mistakes that he had made along the way. And he knew that he was going to have to prove himself, and he's going to have to continue to do so in order for people to kind of give him, because it's not his second chance. It's like his fourth or fifth chance. And so he knew that he had messed up, fumbled quite a few times. And I really loved doing that. I think it was really cool to kind of get to see and speak to him and kind of hear his perspective on things and how much he was really willing to work to change and get back in the NFL.
We tape our show in Milwaukee, so we're surrounded by the Green Bay Packer fans and the rivalries that we have.
I love Packers fans. I have to say, I think that the fans there, my mom is actually from Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And so when I was little, we used to always come visit our grandparents and, go to Packers games sometimes. I just think that those fans are the most diehard, loyal, eat, breathe, sleep Packers fans. I absolutely love it.
They are very sturdy fans, yes.
They are. And even for training camp, you always hear of the stories of like families coming like and renting a house or a spot for training camp and having their whole family come and watch it. That's just so cool. That's like what football is all about. I think it's great.
I often find it funny that our fans are the ones that clean off all the snow in the stadium. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, it's great. I love it.
It's always shocked me. Yeah, they'll volunteer to go in. Well, it's $10 an hour or whatever, but you're shoveling a lot of snow.
And those are huge stadiums. And people like
We
rush
actually did
in
that
line
this
to
year,
do
and I thought
it.
was so cool.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing.
Didn't they get tickets too?
I don't know if they get tickets.
I don't think they got
and
tickets.
They got like a ticket.
Oh, maybe they did. But I mean, there's a line outside, even just for the privilege of shoveling snow. Now that is a diehard fan.
That's a diehard fan.
Well, we've got some pretty big rivalries with the Bears, the Vikings, even the Lions. Do you think there's other rivalries in the NFL that compare to the amount of tension that we feel towards our surrounding teams?
It's pure hate. Just saying.
I would say I think that Ravens Steelers have a pretty heated rivalry.
Yes.
That's like a division that they are not friends on the days that they play each other. Like I even have friends that are Steelers fans and Ravens fans, and they just don't like each other. It's funny, but at the same time they appreciate the rivalry with each other. But the competition is definitely real on game day. It's funny.
Yeah.
I think that's another big rivalry. Giants Cowboys, that's just kind of like a historical rivalry there. But I don't know if that one is as intense as the Packers in their division and the Steelers and Ravens in their division.
I seriously think it makes it fun.
Probably take the cake.
Yeah, it really makes it fun.
What'd you say?
It makes it more fun to have these
it
heated
totally
battles.
Does. And you guys have like the more competitive division because we've got the Browns and Bengals in ours who have kind of struggled the past couple of years. More than that. So yeah. Okay, we're just trying to be nice. We've got to be fair to all 32.
Yeah.
Well, you did hear about what Budweiser's doing in Cleveland, right?
No, what?
Yes, that is so cool. I actually tweeted out and I was like, what week are they going to unlock these beers?
What is happening?
I think it could be, you know what? They have a lot of positives going into this year. They've got Baker Mayfield. They've got Myles Garrett, who this preseason has looked incredible. They've got Jarvis Landry. I think that they were a team last year that honestly didn't lose by that many every game. They were a couple plays away from winning a ton of these games. So I think that this year they honestly could be good.
I like hearing
and
that.
It's interesting. Todd Haley is now there, and he used to obviously coach for the Steelers, and they play each other week one. So Todd Haley kind of knows their playbook a little bit. He knows their weaknesses. He's there for a while. So I think that it could be week one.
They might not get blown out.
So everyone get really thirsty.
Yeah, exactly. So Budweiser locked up beer. They put it in public areas in Cleveland, and when they get their first win, they're going to unlock it, and everybody gets free beer. That's what's going on.
You mean it's like somebody just dropped a Budweiser cooler like at the park or something?
It's like a vending machine type situation.
Yes, isn't that awesome? And then apparently they're going to electronically open.
Right.
Oh, that is fun.
So
okay. It's such a cute idea.
With the new season starting this weekend, who are your early picks for the Super Bowl?
This question, I cannot tell you. It's way too early. Everybody always asks it, and I always would ask it too when I was younger, but it's just, there's so many components that go into it. It's just like which players are going to get injured. You just never know. I mean, I would have thought that the Packers last year would have been really good before Aaron Rodgers got injured.
Right.
I mean, I think that obviously the Rams are on a roll. I would say, barring any big injuries, I think that they're set to be very, very good this year. I think the Jaguars are going to continue being really good. Those are two teams that the Rams went from worst to first last year. And so think about the team that's going to go from worst to first this year. Hey, you never know. It could be the Browns. We could be saying nobody saw it coming, but the Browns are going to the Super Bowl. Granted, I don't think that that's going to happen, but I would say the two teams that were really bad last year that are now good. Mm-hmm. I would also say the Packers. I really think that the Packers are going to be really good this year. The Vikings are going to be good. There's going to be a bunch of good teams.
Excellent. Now, 20 years ago, I got to cover the Brewers, which was super awesome. And I just remember the very first moment as a press person where I got to walk on the field. And it wasn't just like on a tour of the stadium or something like that. Like you were there to work. And it just changed the way you really felt about the game and the people that you were about to interview and that kind of thing. Tell me about what you remember about the very first time you stepped on an NFL field. Did you have those similar feelings?
Yeah, I think that when you spend time on a field and you kind of get to know the personnel from each team, I think that you start to become bigger fans of the teams and the people and the players as individuals. I think that you end up rooting for a coach or you end up rooting for a player just because you've gotten to know them and you just have a rooting interest for them. And so I feel like the more and more time that you spend working like in a certain sport, I think that you you almost root less and less for a specific team, and you root more and more for specific players and stories and coaches.
Have you ever covered a Super Bowl? I was wondering.
I have never covered one. So I've gone for Super Bowl week, and like there's Super Bowl Live, which is before the Super Bowl, where it's like you have Media Row, and I've done stuff there.
Okay.
So I did stuff there last year for In Case You Missed It, which is my show. And so we got to do a few interviews there, but I've never covered a Super Bowl. That's definitely a bucket list thing to do.
Okay. Now, reporting on live TV has to be a little bit intimidating. Do you ever get nervous when the camera's red light goes on?
Yeah, no, you definitely do, especially if you can, the things that make me really nervous are if my audio goes out and you're like, there's an anchor that's tossing to you, and you just kind of have to pretend like you know what they just asked you and kind of answer whatever you think that they were going to ask you. And so that always makes me a little nervous if our audio goes out or if our monitor goes out, which honestly, it happens more often than you think. And so that's a component that definitely makes you nervous. But other than that, I think I've gotten better about it. I used to get a lot more nervous than I do now, but it kind of makes it fun and challenging. And if you don't get nervous, I almost feel like you're just kind of not even thinking about it enough. So I think it's kind of good to always want to try something different and get better and do something a little bit different this hit than you did last hit. And so I think that in order to keep challenging yourself and making yourself get better, you would have to get a little bit nervous because you are trying something new.
Okay.
It's very easy to like stay complacent and try and just like memorize your hit and then move on. But it's always better if you can just kind of talk off the cuff and naturally and not memorize what you're going to say.
Are you more comfortable in the studio setting or a stadium?
I think that I think anybody's probably, or at least me, I would say I'm way more comfortable in the studio because there's less factors that could go wrong, like less external factors. But I think that it's always more exciting and it's more of an adrenaline rush when you're out in the field covering. I just think you get to talk to people more. You kind of are the eyes and the ears. And so rather than reporting somebody else's information, you're kind of the one that's like finding it. And so you always feel like you're able to provide the viewer with something that they wouldn't have gotten, I love doing that.
Talk me through what your kind of prep looks like for a game day.
It's honestly probably the same prep as like every other day. Like I usually get up at like 5:30 to 6 and I just like read anything that could have happened overnight. And it's always good to get different perspectives on, injuries, trades, anything in the news. I usually go to like Pro Football Talk, NFL, Roto World, MMQB, and you just kind of touch on all your bases. And then if you're covering a certain teams, like if I was covering like the Rams and Chargers, which I did a bunch of that for training camp, you go to their team websites, you look up like who their team reporters are, team writers, and just writers that are outside of their specific team, but they cover that team a lot. And it's always good to get that kind of information because they're the closest people to that specific organization and they know the most that's going on.
Okay.
And so then from there, you kind of figure out who you want to talk to, what do you want to talk about, which angle you're going to cover it from.
What our fans really probably want to know is, how good are you at fantasy football?
Oh my gosh, I love fantasy. I actually just had my first fantasy draft yesterday.
So you do play fantasy football. I'm kind of surprised.
I love fantasy football. I've been playing since I was quite a bit younger. We had our family league, and that always got very intense. I just think it's so fun. It kind of gives you rooting interest you have rooting interest of players rather than teams, which is always fun. It keeps especially if you're a big fan of one team, it keeps you interested in what's going on with the other teams and players and whatnot. It's a fun little sport.
Yeah, for me, it certainly helps to learn more about people in the league you wouldn't know about otherwise. So
yeah, and it's something that you have to really keep up with every week because you've got to know what's going on, if they did get injured, if you should sit them, bench them. And of course, it's always frustrating when you bench someone or you bench a quarterback and your other quarterback doesn't perform as well, and that's why you lost.
Right? They have the other guy has a great game,
but
yeah. I just want to know, because it's an interesting situation that you're in because of your uncle's status with the Ravens, owning them. Is it hard for you to be critical of the Ravens during your reporting?
That's a very common question that I get, and honestly, I feel like I'm more critical of that team because I'm like, oh, come on, you're better than that. That player should have known not to do that. And so I feel like I guess the first couple of months it was kind of awkward, if they had gotten in trouble or you were reporting something about them, but honestly, no, not really. It just kind of becomes more of it's just like, what happened is what happened, and your job is to provide the news.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that when any team honestly gets in trouble, you're kind of like, oh, shucks, like I wish this wouldn't have happened.
Right, exactly.
So I feel like it's just I've become kind of immune to it.
We're called fan counters because our podcast likes to know about your encounter with fans. So do you have any encounters that you think were funny or cute or not so cute?
I get the funniest encounters of when people are like, oh my gosh, you're the girl on NFL Network. I never really get anybody that's really excited to meet me. Every single person usually says, do you know Rich Eisen? Is he a nice guy? They all want to know all about Rich Eisen. I should just wear a sign that says, I am Rich Eisen's agent, because I can answer any and all questions about him. I have met Rich Eisen. I wish I was as cool as Rich Eisen, because whenever I go anywhere, I'm like, wow, it must be really cool to be Rich Eisen, because everybody wants to know about him. Every once in a while, they'll ask about players or teams, and they think that you have all this like inside information as to who's going to win what game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, if I knew, I mean, I would be living in Vegas, and I probably wouldn't be working for the NFL Network.
Right.
But it's funny. Everybody's like so infatuated with Rich. I love it. It's hysterical. So next training camp, I think I'm gonna like report around and walk around, because you're around the most fans probably during that time, just because they can come right up to the field. And so I love like listening to them talk. And a lot of times they're actually trying to figure out like who you are, because we have to wear these NFL Network polos, which I'm so thankful for, because it's 900 degrees out and I would be sweating through all my clothes if I wasn't wearing them. I'm still sweating in these like dry fits, except you just can't tell. And so at first I was not a big fan of the polo. Now I'm like their biggest advertiser. I love them. But yeah, they're always like trying to figure out who you are, so I can see them like scrolling through on their phones, like the NFL Network, like talent roster, and then they'll figure it out and they'll be like, Taylor. So like, of course I'll go there and say hello. And they're like, so anyway, what can you tell us about Rich Eisen? It's funny.
Do you get these single drunk guys at the football game saying, hey, let's go on a date? Are you getting any of those encounters that are kind of like, no, we're good?
Yeah, but they're always like, they're usually really like, they're kind of joking around. They're having fun. I don't mind it.
Good. Now, you mentioned the clothes, and you can't browse through your photo gallery on TaylorBisciotti.com without noticing your amazing outfits that you get to wear on the air. I've always wondered, especially for these national reporters, are the clothes yours? Like, are you picking out an outfit that you're wearing for that day? Are they lent to you to wear on the air? Tell us about the clothes.
So I would say it's about 70-30. 70% are probably mine, and then 30% are theirs. Our wardrobe department is it's small, and so we like usually, especially for like news updates, they will give me like a dress that's been worn by like 4 other people, and then they're just like pinning it. And so sometimes it's just not as comfortable to wear their clothes, just because it's been like worn by 3 other anchors like over the span of 2 weeks, and then now they're just like kind of like using paper or like safety pins and trying to make it look presentable. So usually I'm walking around, if I'm using their clothes, I'm walking around the office with like safety pins all in me all day, and people are like, hey, I think you've got a pin on the back of your shirt. I'm like, really? I've got like them all down my back too. So it's about 70-30. Usually if like the clothes like fit somewhat well, I'll wear their clothes, because they do get great clothes in. And then 70% of the time, it's just easier if I just come in my own clothes and dress myself. And plus, it's kind of fun to dress yourself. You have your own sense of like taste and style. And if I can, I would choose to dress myself more often.
Now, one thing I have always been curious about is the highlight reels. And I was so excited to have you on the show, because I really want to ask this really dumb question. And so don't laugh. But is there some secret magic that goes into the timing of what you're saying coinciding with what we're watching on TV? I mean, because those clips have to be put together ahead of time. How is everything so timely?
Say like Larry Fitzgerald just announced that he's going to retire, or he's going to announce that he's going to continue playing. Well, I'll lead off with like Larry Fitzgerald, blah, 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 facts about him. And then they'll take video of just Larry. So like it'll be Larry over the years, or Larry before he's announcing his retirement, or whatever it is. And so they usually already have video that's kind of like stocked like in a pile or like a folder that says Larry Fitzgerald.
Okay. But what about game highlights too? Because, all of your descriptions match.
You know what's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, exactly like what specific play usually.
It all seems like magic to me. I'm just saying. I always wondered.
It's really not as fancy as it looks, I can assure you.
So speaking of that, how much of what comes out of your mouth is from a teleprompter, and how much of it is improv just on the situation?
So for news updates, because we are like set to 60 seconds, I usually write out pretty much like what I'm going to say beforehand. Of course, there's always, circumstances where you aren't able to, or like you're doing something that's breaking. So in that case, you won't have time to. So that's just talking. But for 60-second like news updates, you're really trying to get it all in there. And so you write out kind of exactly what you want to say, because you don't really want to waste 5 seconds of, stumbling over words in 60 seconds. Now, if like I'm doing like a show on stage, that's usually pretty much improv, because, you've got guests coming on, and I don't know, it's always so much better when you haven't memorized questions for guests, because then you're not really listening to what they're saying.
Right.
So that is definitely improv. And then out in the field is totally, because there's no teleprompter out there, of course.
Now, the preseason games showed that the kneeling controversy with the national anthem is not going to go away this year. Is this a big distraction for the players? Or how much of it is just fan and media made?
It's funny, because when you ask the players, like we've had, our first day of training camp, somebody asked Jared Goff, is this going to be a big distraction? He's like, he kind of like not scoffed at the question, but kind of like laughed. He's like, no, not at all. This isn't going to be a distraction at all for our team. And so it's funny, because when you speak to the players, they really, or most of them, they don't seem to be affected by it at all. And the teams really, I don't think that they want it to affect their team or be a distraction. And so I think that that's, from my experiences of covering the training camps, they have not been, it's not even been like talked about as an issue at all. And if you think about it, at the end of last year, there was only 9 players that were kneeling during the national anthem. And I think that sometimes the media makes it a bigger story, and they make it into like something much bigger than it really is.
Yep, I agree.
Granted, I do think that I think that the biggest like unfortunate situation of this is that it's affected a lot of the fans. And so I think that a lot of the fans feel very strongly one way or the other. And so I think that there's been a big loss of fans. But other than that, I think that the players are focused on football, and they're focused on playing the game.
So a few weeks ago, because we're coming down to the end of this time with you, we came up with a little game to kind of get our listeners to know our guests a little bit more. So we have a favorites game we're hoping that you'll play, where basically I'm going to read 30 words of topics, and you just tell me what your favorite is in that category. And we've been timing them, and most people are right around 1:45 for these 30 questions. So we were going to kind of see where you rank on this. So you want to play?
So are we trying to do it really quick?
Yes. And it's just the first thing that pops into your head, like when he asks you what it is, and you don't need to explain anything. Just move to the next question.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
So these are Taylor's 30 favorites. Movie.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Book.
Gone Girl.
Color.
Blue.
Actor.
Anthony Hopkins.
Superhero.
Batman.
Fruit.
Strawberry.
Vegetable.
Corn.
Ice cream.
Cookies and cream.
TV show.
Succession.
Candy.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Restaurant.
Blue Plate Taco.
Article of clothing.
Jean shorts.
Music artist.
Taylor Swift.
Board game.
Othello.
Sport.
Football.
School subject.
Math.
Car.
Bentley.
Okay. State.
Georgia.
And your city.
Atlanta.
Drink.
Coke.
Number.
13.
Cereal.
Fruit Loops.
Store.
Forever 21.
Cartoon.
Nah, This might get me.
Let's do season instead.
Fall.
Cookie,
Chocolate chip.
chips,
Barbecue.
and day of the week.
Sunday.
All right. So we got a minute 56. Not bad.
No, that's like right up with we got a minute 55, a minute 57.
That was kind of slow. We should have been quicker. That was all me.
No, I stumped you with cartoon. You're
Yeah,
like, you probably haven't watched a
I can't
cartoon.
even think of a cartoon.
Well, the funny thing is that I've listened to this list probably 6 or 8 times now. And every time a guest does it, I'm kind of doing it in my head, and they change every time I do it. So it's really hard because if you do the first thing that pops into your head, it's not necessarily what's going to pop into your head tomorrow. So it's very weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree.
Very weird.
Well, thanks for being a good sport. We appreciate you playing. See, now we learned a few new
Who's the
things.
winner? I'm so curious.
Who's
been the
the
quickest?
127?
Well, I had 127.
But he also wrote the questions.
Yeah, that's true.
I
So
was going to say, you don't count. That's not fair.
we had, I guess, so the top person so far, you're second by 1 second.
Really?
155 was Guava Juice from YouTube. And then you were at
Okay.
156. Sarah Reasons from Dance Moms was 157. So the times are very close.
Yeah.
So we've only done
So
it
I've got
3
it
times.
better than Guava Juice. He's my competitor right now.
That's right. Yeah. You and Guava Juice are it, man. So your busy season is upon us. So tell me what you think
Yes.
2018 has in store for you.
It's going to be, it's so funny because once the season hits, you're kind of your vacation time and all your free time is kind of over with just because you pretty much know your schedule. And every week it doesn't really change. They have them as blackout dates. It's what our in-season time is called, because if you request off, you're certainly not guaranteed to get it just because you are expected to be there. They are really great about giving us a ton of time off in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
And so by this time the season comes, you kind of want to be there than all the news that breaks, just because it is so exciting and it is the start of a fresh new season.
Yeah.
I always love the beginning of a season because every single fan base is holding out just a little bit of hope still that their team is going to be great. And so you really have everybody that all the different fans and all the different teams that are still involved and holding out hope that their team is going to be really good this year. So I always think it's the most exciting time of the year for anybody that works in football and anybody that is a fan of football. I love it.
For sure. And I guess the last thing we just want to know is, where can our listeners find you on social media?
I am on Twitter at Taylor Bisciotti and also on Instagram at Taylor Bisciotti. It's really, really hard.
Right, yeah. Do you interact with fans on those platforms, or is it kind of...
Yes, I do.
Yeah, awesome.
I definitely do.
Very good. Well, Taylor,
Okay.
it's been a great hour
Yes,
with
ask
you.
me any of your fantasy picks. Now, I can't guarantee you that they're going to be right, but I'll have an opinion for sure.
Okay, so post those on Twitter, and she'll give you her thoughts on that.
Yes,
Awesome.
definitely.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for being here. We had a great time. Good luck this season. We'll certainly be watching you on the NFL Network.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Don't tell me to put on my headphones again. Every time I take them off, I'm like, we have to finish the show.
I know. It's so funny because as soon as we say goodbye to the guest, Nick is halfway out the door. I'm like, we're not done, dude. We're not done.
Well, Taylor was awesome.
She was. Actually, I was very hesitant about this because, as you know, I know zero about football. And as she was rattling off those people's names, I, glazed over. I have no idea who any of those people are. But I felt that I still understood what she was saying, and I'm thrilled, to have had a chance to talk with her, because what a remarkable girl, or woman rather, that, has really come into her own in a sport that is quite male-dominated.
Sure. Yeah. And that's why it was interesting to talk to her about a lot of the stuff that's come up lately with women, being equals in these male-dominated workplaces.
She would be good for Melinda Hale to have on Boss Please, because that's a pretty male-dominated world that she's working in.
That's true. They
Yeah.
would get along really well. Melinda was on the program last week, so.
I also thought your wife, Kathy, the rocket scientist,
Yeah.
would be another good one.
That's right. There's a lot of politics going on in her work right now, so.
Oh, no good. No good.
It's pretty interesting around my house these days.
Yikes.
Yeah, well. Okay, so you can follow us again at Fan Counters Live on Twitter and Instagram. We're on Facebook. That's where most of you are following us. And you can search Facebook for Fan Counters. We're also on our email every day. You can send a message to hello@fancounters.com. And we would love to hear feedback on the show by rating us 5 stars on your podcasting platform. Did I hit everything?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, okay. We are back next week with a fantastic guest. It's an A-lister from years gone by.
I was pretty excited when you told me you were going to do it.
All right, well, you'll have to come back and find out who that is next week on Fan Counters.
See ya.
This was a podcast from the PodFix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.